Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am here with Joey Myers. And Joey, just to tell you a little bit about Joey Myers, he played 4 years of D1 ball at Fresno State. He's a member of the American Baseball Coaches Association, International Youth and Conditioning Association, and the Society for American Baseball Research. He's a certified youth fitness specialist, a corrective exercise specialist, and a vinyasa yoga instructor, and certified in functional muscle screen. Joey was frustrated with his own hitting in college and wanted to figure out a better way, and now he's the author of the Amazon bestseller, The Catapult Loading System, How to Teach 100-Pound Hitters to Consistently Drive the Ball 300 Feet. Joey and I have known each other for a few years now. Joey and I were both fans of Tim Ferriss's work, and I was in the 4-Hour Body, and Joey heard of me there, and that's one of Tim Ferriss's books, and reached out to me, and we started chatting. This was, I don't know, maybe 5 or so years ago, and so we've kind of had a relationship talking about business and baseball and what we, what our strategies are as far as what we teach and all that stuff. And I wanted to have Joey on the call and talk about his theories of the baseball swing and just get an understanding of his ideas of the movement. And so, Joey, I thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me. And I got, just in case we need any kind of examples or I need to demonstrate anything, I got my bag here.
Nice. Yep, I got mine too. So we're all set. So, the first thing is, what are your thoughts as far as the way the swing is taught out there? How is your understanding of the swing different? And I guess another way I could phrase this is, how is it different from how you understood it in college? And then maybe also, how is it different from what you see being taught out there?
Yeah, good question. So being taught in college, it was the whole down and through, swing down, swing through type thing that we often see and hear the Albert Pujols, Alex Rodriguez is saying that they swing down, or Mike Trout says he gets on top of the ball. And those were, after I kind of got enlightened a little bit, those were very frustrating cues to hear, because I was like, swing down. That's what I was taught. And I didn't make it to the big leagues like these guys. I was taught the same dang things and it didn't work. So fast forward to 2013, we had our first kid, a boy, Noah, who's now 7. So this was 7 years ago. And in the sleepless nights, the getting up 6 times a night, the wife was feeding Noah, and the wife made me feel guilty to go back to sleep, which I go to back to sleep really quickly. So she kind of felt like, hey, you need to be up too if I'm up. So in those nights, I picked up a book, and I think I was trying to fix something in my own body because of the swinging and things. I was in fitness at the time. And so I picked up Thomas Myers' book, Anatomy Trains. And Thomas Myers, we aren't related directly, but I'm sure somewhere on the family tree we're somewhere directly related. And I read through that book. It took me, I had to read over pages 3-4 times. I didn't have a lot of really liked it. I was curious, that was something that you and I have in common. We have this passion, curiosity for the swing. And that just started a big, long, deep rabbit hole that I went through. So Thomas Myers Anatomy Trains, then there was a book called Dynamic Body, and it was a collaboration of different authors that were kind of in that springy fascia, Rolfing type of genre in the fitness industry. And in that book, that steered me over to Dr. Serge Grakovetsky's The Spinal Engine. So what I was finding before I started going down that rabbit hole was a lot of probably in the journey that you've been in recently in researching other people and what they teach, it was a lot of things being taught, retaught, things that I was trying to reteach myself, and it wasn't working. And so I figured, it's probably user error. And then finally getting through a lot of that information, the light bulb went on, and I was like, you know what? Maybe there's something to this human movement, the human movement principles or rules to human movement. And when you look at it through the lens, you look at hitting through the lens of human movement science, say physics or biomechanics or engineering or anything like that, it changes the game. So I tell my coaches that follow me, I say, hey, you need a better standard for your hitters. It can't just be the same, what I call kind of garbage over and over that doesn't work, doesn't really have much experimentation behind it. So that got me into what my thing is now, is applying human movement principles that are validated by science to hitting a ball. So that's kind of where I've fast forwarded to where I'm at now.
And when you say that, applying human movement principles, where do you get the principles? Where do you get the science information from?
Good question. Jamie, to your turn your camera a little bit. You got a little bit of a glare from the sun.
Okay.
Oh, that's better. There you go. There you go. That's better. Good. Just for the readers out there when they're listening to you talk.
Got it.
So the principles, the big ones that really opened my eyes were from Dr. Serge Grakovetsky's The Spinal Engine. So Dr. Serge is a physicist and electrical engineer. He took one of the biggest, I think, case studies for me that sold me on the whole thing was he had I don't know if he was a patient, client, whatever, but he was a quadriplegic. He was born that way. So I think he had nubs for arms. He walked on the bottom of his pelvis. I think they call it the ischium. And he had hooked this gentleman up to put pads on his spine, along his spine, to measure muscle output, to measure the connective tissue output. And if you watch this guy walk, and if you just go on YouTube and you put Dr. Serge Grakovetsky Spinal Engine, it'll come up. It's an old video. It's like in the 80s, I think, mid 80s, late 80s. And if you watch this, it's about the 4-minute mark. So he's got video footage of this gentleman walking. And if you cover up his lower half, like his pelvis basically, and just watch him move, you would swear the guy wasn't a quadriplegic. You'd swear he had legs. So he was born without legs and arms. And he was moving like normal people move, but without legs and arms. And so that was, to me, I was trying to look for the foundation of the foundation. And locomotion is what Dr. Serge talks about. So without locomotion, we aren't human. And he talks about 3 different, and these are kind of the principles. He talks about 3 different spinal movements that the spine can do. There's flexing. So just imagine yourself kind of arching your back, right? But your lower back is already has a slight curve to it anyway. So it's already started off. If you just stand there and don't do anything, it's already started off in an extended position. They call it lordosis. The second one, or they put extension and flexion together. So flexion would be like you doing a crunch, where you're kind of crunching up and you're bending your back that way. So those 2 he kind of puts together. So those are number 1. Number 2 is side bend. So it's just going side to side. And then the third one, the last one, is called axial rotation, which just means that your shoulders can move independent, or not independent, but your shoulders move one way and your pelvis moves the other. That's why our right arm and left leg comes forward at the same time. We don't walk with the right arm and the left leg coming forward at the same time. So that is basic locomotion, and all 3 of those movements happen when we walk. And from the minute we start walking, the reason in the beginning it's so hard for the baby to kind of get into the toddler stage is because that lower back doesn't have the curve in it yet. It's actually more straight, if not more flexed, because they're kind of in that crunch position. And then it's them trying to create that musculature to create that curve in the lower back. And so once they get that, they get more steady. And then that's really interesting. More of a foundation. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that the curve at the bottom of your spine takes a little while to develop.
Yeah.
That must be an ontology recapitulates phylogeny type of thing, where we were crawling in the beginning, and then we needed that curve for upright walking.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, because think about it in the wild, where you have a good example of side bending are sharks. So sharks, when they swim, it's this movement, right?
Yep.
And if you look at whales, our fellow kin mammals, right? Their extension flexion. So their tails this way. Dolphins, same thing,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Dr. Serge talks about a lot of this. And then if you watch dogs, it's similar. It's like you see this kind of move that goes like this. It's up and down, side to side, butt kind of goes one way, head and another. And what's interesting is there's three sections of the spine. You have the C, the cervical. You have the T, the thoracic, which is the middle, kind of the biggest part, 12 vertebrae in the middle. And then you have, so there's 7 in the top part in the cervical. 2 of them we can't see because it kind of inserts into the skull. Then you have the 12 of the thoracic, which is the biggest part of the spine. And then you have the lumbar, which is 5 vertebrae. And what was interesting to me is if you look at the curve, so the neck, so imagine the neck's curving this way. The thoracic part curves the opposite. You can't see it. Here we go. Let's go this way. So the thoracic curves the opposite way. And then the L, the lumbar, lower back, curves the same way as the cervical. So it's like C, and then and you got backward C in the middle. Interesting how everything was designed.
Wow. So we got keep going about how it's different from your understanding is different from how you understood it in college or how people understand it right now.
Yeah, that's a good one. So connecting the dots of today, and I know you've been doing your research and stuff, and there are swing people out there, and I won't mention any names. Most of you out there listening to this will probably know who I'm talking about, but they talk about that the barrel moves the body. Okay. The body doesn't move the barrel, which if you have a human movement foundation, you hear that and it's automatically ignorant, automatically. So the people that are saying that have no clue how the human body moves. And if they claim that they've read and understand Dr. Serge Grakovetsky's spinal engine, that's a lie. It's a con job. Because, and you can go and look up David Weck, weckmethod.com, W-E-C-K method.com. He was the inventor of the Bosu ball. Most of you out there have been to a gym. You see that ball that's got the big bulb on the bottom and the surface on the top, and it makes exercises really hard to do. So he was the inventor of that. And then over the last probably 4 or 5 years, he's really got into the spinal engine stuff. And the guy's a sharp guy. If you go on Instagram, he's really, really active on Instagram. Very, very sharp guy. And he's all about spinal engine. And you have so many others like, what's his name? Dr. Joe Lacroix, I think. He's Rotex Motion. There's another one. I can't think of his name right off the bat, but he's got a system. It's all based on kind of body. There's a lot of spirals in the body. If you read Thomas Myers' Anatomy Trains, he talks about the spiral line that comes across the chest, and it comes back down around the butt. And then you see one that comes under as a stirrup under the foot. And so when you understand, and you don't have to be like, again, I was self-taught. I just was curious, passionate curiosity about everything. You don't need to know the language per se, but if you can understand the concept of just locomotion for those parents out there, those coaches out there that want to get involved in this, but have no clue how to start. If you just understand those three types of spinal movement, from there, you can pretty much figure out how everything else is supposed to move. So when you have somebody that says that the barrel moves the body, that doesn't make sense, because human movement, we're fighting gravitational forces, but movement starts from the middle out is what we call it, not from the ground up. It's from the middle out, from the spine out, basically.
Wow. I came to that realization a couple of years ago myself. And the swing starts from the ground up suddenly wasn't correct to me. It's more that it starts in the center of your body and shoots in two directions, almost like a like they're working against each other.
Yep. Yes. That's a great observation, man. And I know you're a smart dude. You like to kind of think outside the box philosophically, and that's exactly what's happening. So if we take this idea of springy fascia, okay, fascia is, if you foam rolled, that's self-myofascial release, right? So if you foam roll, that's kind of what you're trying to do. If you foam roll your IT band and it hurts like the dickens, if you haven't done it in a while, it feels like somebody's stabbing a knife in the side of your leg, right? So fascia is a cotton candy or spider webby-like material that your bones and muscles float in. It also gives muscles their shape. It's almost like, if you think about it, at the grocery store, if you buy a bag of potatoes, the potatoes are the muscles. The bag itself that the potatoes are wrapped in is the fascia. It's connected. There's a sheet or one line anatomy train that attaches the top of your eyebrow, it's called the back line, goes over the head and goes straight down the back, butt, hamstrings, back of the calves, and attaches to the bottom of the back of the ball of your foot. So it goes through your arch in there. So that's one whole sheet. And there's 9 different ones, I think, is what Thomas Myers talks about, that are all intermingled, interweaved. And so you have this idea of compression tension forces. So this fascia is comprised of compression tension. So compression force is just a piece of granite or a brick on a brick, right? Brick on a brick, they exert forces against each other. That's a compression force. A tension force would be like a boom crane, a wrecking ball. You have the structure of the boom crane, you have the cable and it kind of comes over and it holds the wrecking ball down here. So that cable that's connected to the wrecking ball, that's a tension force. So you have force from the structure that's pulling up, and you have the wrecking ball and gravity that's pulling down, and you have this kind of tensional force between the two. So in fascia, you have both compression tension. So what's interesting is, and this is all kind of Thomas Myers stuff, is he says that granite has a very high, granite the rock, like if you had a countertop, granite countertops, that granite has a very, very high tolerance for compression. So you can put a ton of weight on top of granite and it's not going to break. It's not going to snap, break, whatever. But it has a very low tensional force. So if you hooked up, you drilled holes in 2 sides of the granite, say you had a long countertop, drilled big holes in both sides of the granite, hooked in like a big fat strong carabiner. You got the chain hooked up to a horse on both sides, and you have the horses walk away or run away from each other. That granite's going to pull apart because its tensional force isn't very strong. But fascia in the human body is both strong compression and tension. So whether you're in a good posture, good position, or you have some bad juju, your body's just not in that right, you're going to have those compression tension forces, but they might be off a little bit. And it's going to wear out like mileage on your, say if you're a car and you got a front end that's misaligned, you got the tires that are out like this. Well, they're guaranteed 80,000 miles if your tires were aligned. But since they're misaligned, you might get about half the mileage on those tires. Well, it's the same thing with fascia. It's going to, over time, if it's off, then you're going to wear out joints. You're going to wear out shoulders. You're going to wear out necks. You're going to wear out lower backs, whatever. So it's amazing when you dig into the fascia side and spinal engine. They're both pretty related, because without the fascia, it's like they both are independent or dependent on each other. So the fascia is a connective tissue. The spine is what they're saying. Bones are actually connective tissue as well. They're fascia, but it's wound. That fascia is wound really, really, really dense. So bone does bend, but there's a threshold till finally it breaks, but it does bend.
Okay. So what would you say is your understanding of the swing? We keep going off on.
Yeah. So how this relates to the swing is loading and unloading. So this is the catapult loading system. This was the book you mentioned that was the 2017 Amazon bestseller. So this took power to a whole nother level. And I ran the experiments when I was going through this. I was seeing what others were doing, like Trout, and at the time Andrew McCutcheon was doing well, and Batista, Donaldson, all these guys. So I took that information, looked at the players to see how this was being translated, how they were translated.
The Hitting Performance Lab wants to know, did you know repeatable hitting power does not start in the hips? Have you heard the expressions, load and explode the hips? Power comes from the hips. Well, we created a free video revealing the results of a scientific study that will show you how we added 48 feet of batted ball distance instantly. And it's not all about the hips. Click here now to get the video while it's still free.